Good morning, YouTubers. Today. I woke up this morning and I came to the shop. It was pouring down rain. I mean, absolutely horrendous storms. And I thought it was going to be an indoors kind of day, but then the sun came out. Beautiful sunny day. And so, what I decided is I'm going to work on my Q5. So, let me show you what's going on. So if you watch my other videos, you know that I tried already once to install this tow hitch on this vehicle. It didn't work because my mounting holes on the tow hitch, they weren't quite far enough apart. It was an inch too narrow. I called the manufacturer. They said it's the only one that they make and that quality has never been an issue in the past. So my guess is that somewhere in transit the box may have gotten dropped and it was enough of a force to kind of push it together a little bit. So my objective today, I'm gonna see if I can't widen this out a little bit and make it work. The end goal today is to make this trailer hitch work. I'm gonna modify it however I have to, and I'm gonna install it on the car today. Armed with the information that I had from my first attempt, my failed attempt, I'm gonna go ahead and modify this hitch. At first I was gonna try to send it back, get my money back, and order a different one. That was not an option. I took too long to do the return. He did give me a little bit of money as compensation, which, you know, he didn't really owe me anything. The distributor, I should say, doesn't owe me anything because I waited too long to do the return, so it's kind of my fault. But either way, the point is that I'm stuck with this trailer hitch now, and so I'm gonna modify it to make it work. So as usual, if you like the videos I make, click like so I know I should make more of the same. If you want to see more when I make them, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. So in my last attempt at installing this trailer hitch on the car, I discovered that the mounting holes from end to end were narrower than the body of the car, where the frame rails are. My first instinct is to try to figure out a way to bend this out a bit. It doesn't have to go far, but for the sake of simplicity, we're measuring, and from end to end, this thing is 40.25 inches. So 40.25 inches from one edge to the other edge. I need it to be, well, I don't know that I'm gonna bend it a full inch out. I'll probably go 3/4 inch to start. So what I'm going to do, since the process of putting this in involves a whole lot of exhaust removal and stuff like that, I can't just fit it up, look at it, put it back down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to try to bend this out from 40.25 inches to 40 inches end to end. That would be an extension of 3/4 inch. And then once I'm able to do that, if I'm able to do that, then what I'm going to do is drop the exhaust like I did on my previous video, and then put this up in there, see if these holes line up. If I can get the holes to line up with the frame of the car, the rest of it is pretty simple and well, it's not simple, but it's straightforward. It's just a matter of drilling holes, nuts, bolts, assembly, stuff like that. In this video, we are focusing strictly on the mechanical part of the trailer installation. I'm gonna do the electrical on a different video depending on how long this takes, but more than likely it's gonna take up more time than I want on a single video. And so I'm not going to add on to that with the electrical. I'll do this in one video, and if you want to see how the electrical goes, we'll do that in a different video. So the first order of business, widening this up. Now, this might be a little bit of a problem because these trailer hitches are designed to hold 4,000 pounds. So it's a substantial piece of metal. This comes in, I can't even read this thing. So this metal comes in at about 1/4 inch thick. These metal tabs on the end here, these are a 1/2 inch thick metal, a lot more substantial. I don't even know what they mount to on the body of the car. I didn't get a chance to see what they would line up with. Obviously they have a significant reason, otherwise they wouldn't be that substantial. But first order of business, trying to figure out a way to push these ends out about 3/4 of an inch total. So this end and this end are going to get pushed out, and then it's going to end up with a total width of 41 inches instead of 40.25 inches. So let me see if I can't figure out a way to do that with what I have in the shop. And if I can figure out some kind of method, then I'll show you guys what I got going on. I made a trip to the hardware store, and this is the possible solution that I came up with. This is a piece of 1-inch square tubing. I would have rather get round tubing, but they didn't have round tubing in the diameter that I wanted. And this is a 1 foot piece of all thread. And so what I have is I have 2 nuts and then 2 washers, one on either side, that goes into this square tubing. I drilled holes on it, so I have 1 bolt going through the side of the square tubing, and then this one is going to go through the other side of the all thread, and then I'm going to bolt it onto this side with this, and then I'm going to turn these nuts to push it out. The only concern I have with this is that drilling this hole made this square tubing kind of thin, but the stress isn't really on the thin part of the wall, it's on the entire part of the square tubing. I wanted this all thread to be as short as possible when I'm screwing it in, because it is kind of the weak part of the link. So I don't know, I'm excited to see what happens here. So let me put this bolt and nut and stuff through this side to hold it in place, and then I'm gonna start cranking and we'll see what happens. All right, I'm ready to make some action happen here. I have my all thread set in here. I have it bolted on both sides, and so there's a vice grip in the middle. The reason why there's a vice grip in the middle is because as I'm cranking this, I might lose track of where the center of the all thread is, and I want the same amount left on each side inside of here. I don't want it to be all the way on one side or the other. So the vice grip is here, so I always know where the center of the all thread is. Also, if I need to hold it in place while I'm cranking one of these bolts, I can use this vice grip. I have my tape measure, vice grip to one side so that I know how far out I'm going. I marked my end goal here. I'm thinking I'm probably going to end up having to go a little bit past the end goal and then let it release and pass, you know, just to bend it out. What I should have done was had the car ready to try fit this, but before any of that happens, I'm going to see if it's even possible with this setup to get any kind of flex on this hitch, to see if that part of it will work. So if I can get some flex on this hitch, that'll be fantastic. Then I can go ahead and drop the exhaust and start adjusting this to make sure that it'll fit in the car, and then just go from there. So time to get to cranking. I cranked it out now to where it's 41 1/8, so it's a little bit past my goal. This actually worked as good as I expected it to. I'm happy with the way this little gizmo here is working. When I cut this, I cut it a little bit slanted, and so I might just go back with the grinder and flatten that piece out because it kind of wants to cock to one side. But other than that, everything is working exactly as planned, so I'm gonna release the pressure on this and remeasure it and see if I ended up where I want it to be. So let's try it, releasing the pressure. There's no more tension on this. And my resting width is 40 3/4. So I've gained about a 1/2 inch. It's not as much as I would have liked, but I'm at the point now where I think I'm ready to drop the exhaust, crawl under there, set this in, and see how close we are as far as the overall width is, and just go from there. Instead of overshooting, why not just make sure it's right the first time? So that's what we're gonna do. Also, I think it's worth mentioning at this time, these are standard bolts, not metric, and they're coarse thread, and they're crappy quality. They're flat out crappy quality. I'm gonna end up going to the hardware store and buying some really nice mounting hardware. In fact, I'm probably gonna do that before I start taking the car apart. That way I don't have to go to the hardware store with the car taken apart or the exhaust hanging, or have to put it back together to make a hardware run. So I think I'm gonna go get some proper hardware and come back, and then I'm gonna drop the exhaust and go from there. I dropped the exhaust all the way down, took out the heat shields. So it's kind of a pain, but it's a necessary evil, because I have to remove those heat shields, both sides, so that I can drill the holes to mount the tow hitch. And then I have to put up the heat shields and drill through them to install the tow hitch. So take out the heat shields, drill the holes, put in the heat shields, drill more holes, and then install the tow hitch. Fun times. We are having fun times. But with that said, my widening of the brackets worked, but not enough. So let me show you what's going on under here. So this is the passenger side, and the bracket is about where it needs to be. So this is where this hole goes. It goes up in the frame here, so I'm gonna have to undo the inside of the car to the point where I can get to this part of the frame, so that I can drill a hole, put a nut, put a bolt, and bolt it in there. Also, here's the problem. So this side is lined up pretty good. It's where I would want it to be. But when I go around the other side, it is inboard a little bit. So this time I'm going to take my tape measure, and I'm going to measure the difference between where it is and where I want it to be. And then I'm going to take it all out again and widen it up some more. I mean, I'm really close to the mark, but it's still too narrow. So back to the widening stretching board. I keep stretching it out to where it's 41.5, and then when I release the pressure, it goes right back down below 41. I'm shooting for 41 as my ultimate goal. Is when I take all the tension off of it, I want it to be 41 inches wide. You know, at 41.5 it wasn't any good, and then 41 3/4 was really close, but since I already got everything out here, I'm just gonna try to shoot for 41, which is the end goal. I wanted 41 inches from end to end, from this edge to the other edge over there. So I got it at 41 3/4 right now. I'm almost to the point where I wonder if maybe I should introduce heat into the equation, but I'm gonna stretch it out to 42 and then release the tension and see where I am. We are where we want to be. I stretched it out to 42, let it sit while I surf YouTube for a little while, and then now we are dead on 41 inches wide. That looks right to me. So let me put it under the car and see if I screwed up. Now that I have the bracket where I want it, I disassembled the trunk to an extent. Now on the bracket, once you get it lined up right, there's this hole which is covered by a little piece of tape. I just took the tape off. It's sitting right here. That hole is lined up with the bracket on the backmost hole, and then the same thing on this side. So what I need to do is make a template so that I can line it up on the bottom with this hole that goes straight through, It goes straight through the body of the car here. Let me see if I can show you with the camera. Come on, come on, come on. Yeah, see, it goes straight through to the bottom of the car. So I'm gonna have to widen that hole, of course, because there's no way to fit a socket in there unless I want to run a bolt all the way through up to here, which I don't know that I want to do that. So anyway, yeah, I'm gonna have to widen that hole, drill the hole for the front of the bracket, and then there's a hole that goes all the way in the front in a different section. I'm gonna drill it up from the bottom, see where it goes. I think it actually goes inside of this piece, so I might have to drill a hole in this also to get a socket in so that I can run a nut and bolt through there, and that'll be that part. So all right, next step in the process, make a template and drill some holes in my car. I cut out these two pieces of steel and I drill them right where the holes for the bracket would be. So when you put this, put it this way, put this up to this, the holes line up. Now the holes are smaller in diameter. These are pilot holes, I guess you could say, because they're not the finished product. I'm gonna have to widen them out, but what's gonna happen when I'm done is these holes are gonna be way wider, and I'm gonna try to get this, use this as a template as to where I'm gonna drill holes in the body of the car. Because once I get this, once I get one bolt through the body of the car and bolt it onto here, exactly where it's going to be, then I can drill through this side and it'll be exactly where I want it to be, and so it'll line up with this when it's all said and done. That's the objective, except that my drill battery is dead, so right now I'm just gonna sit around and goof off for a little while my drill battery charges up a little bit so I can get some more stuff done. I drilled this hole out with a hole saw. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, but I'm noticing that nut, so the nut that's gonna go on there is small, like there's a lot of hole around the nut, so it wouldn't be as snug as I would like it to. I would like to have a flare nut, but see, like that's the nut and it's almost coming out of the bottom of the car. See that? We don't want that. I have a solution though. I have a solution. It's evening time and I have way more time into this than I ever planned on having. So let me show you guys. I cut a big hole with a hole saw and then sliced it with my angle grinder on both sides to bend this up. You'll see why in a second. Did the same thing over here. This one turned out better because this side my hole saw was working. On this side my hole saw pretty much disintegrated while I was trying to cut it, so I did what I could and then cut the rest with an angle grinder. And all that black you see around there, that's just Rust-Oleum spray that I sprayed on it, so that when it's done, I'll show you guys in a second what's gonna happen. But under here I have two holes drilled. So I have this hole, and this is the factory hole. This came with the car. This one I'm gonna have to drill out with my hole saw. I have a step bit. That's what you call it, a step bit. So I'm gonna have to open up that hole with a step bit, and then same thing over here. I'm gonna have to open up that hole with a step bit, real big. And then what I came up with, the reason why I boogered up the inside of my car is because I made these things. So I took a flat steel plate and I drilled holes to match the holes here, and then I welded nuts on them, and so it's just black because I just sprayed the hell out of it with Rust-Oleum. So I'm gonna give it a couple of minutes to dry. It doesn't have to be completely dry, it just has to be dry enough for me to touch it, and I'm gonna slide it down in that hole with the nuts facing up, and then the same thing on the other side, so that I can run my bolts up through the holes and into this bracket that's gonna set down in there, of course through that, and that's gonna hold it in place. I still have to drill the holes for this front section here, but that's just straightforward. I'm just gonna drill holes and then drop the nuts, and I'm not making a bracket and all that extra fancy stuff. It's just gonna be nuts and bolts, which I already bought the nuts and bolts. So the hard part is done, kind of. The only other thing that's gonna be a bit of a headache maybe is lining up the bolts on both sides to get everything snugged up. But once I do that, the project should be done. You know, it's like 4 o'clock in the evening. I started this 10 o'clock in the morning. I was thinking I'd be done by maybe 1, 2 o'clock. But multiple trips to the hardware store and lots of backtracking and figuring out what I was doing has caused it to take longer than expected. It's just, you know, I wasn't gonna run these bolts that they gave me. They're crappy. They're really crappy. Like, the thread is messed up. On a couple of them, you can't even put the nut on the bolt because the threads are so messed up, you know, and it just looks really crappy quality. And so I'm not gonna risk having a bolt or something on the back of my car and just take off flying in the opposite direction off the highway. So I went and got all stainless steel hardware from the hardware store, and that's what we're putting in. So let me give this a minute to dry, try to install it, and I'll show you guys what the finished product looks like. I did my test fit, and that bolt is in place, and the hole lines up, and the same thing on the other side, the hole lines up great. So now it's just a matter of taking it all back out, drilling some big holes in the heat shield, and then putting the heat shield on, and then bolting it in together. So yeah, everything fits. Everything fits. This is going to be a little bit higher up. It's going to be almost touching the bumper when it's all tightened up. It's not tight on there. There's like maybe a 1/4 inch of space between the body and this. So, and also here, there's about an eighth, a little over an eighth of an inch. So it'll be tight. I don't think it'll touch the bumper, but it'll be really tucked up under there, which is good. I mean, it's the next best thing to the OEM tow hitch, which actually comes all the way up here. That's what I like, but you know, I didn't buy a car with a tow hitch, so this is what I end up with. It'll be fine. It'll be just fine. So let me go ahead and take this all back apart and put the heat shield on and put it together so I can go home. The deed is done. So I got a tow hitch now. Next step is going to be the wiring, which shouldn't be that bad. I did it on a Touareg and it wasn't a big deal. I'm not in love with the idea of having the tow hitch hang down below the body of the car, but it's actually not hanging down that much lower. You know, it takes up maybe 2.5 inches of my ground clearance in the back. I just got to be mindful of that if I'm going up steep inclines or anything of that nature. I like it. It was overkill, especially making those brackets with the nuts welded to them. That was overkill. But it gives me the peace of mind. I mean, when I put the impact and I snugged them things all the way down, and I knew they weren't gonna strip out because it was cheap, soft nuts and bolts, you know, that gives you a certain level of satisfaction and peace of mind, knowing that it's on there. You know, it's on there good and proper. I'm not worried about it at all. I got the biggest bolts that I could fit in there, and I tightened them down really good. And I sprayed the inside of everything with Rust-Oleum all the way down there where the bolts are and everything. So, you know, rust preventative measure. I mean, it was bone dry inside of there, nothing but dust, no rust or anything. But still, I'd rather do that than have it in the back of my mind that maybe those bolts are in there rusting away. The only thing I got left to do is snap these panels back in place, and then the tie down hooks, I got to put those in with the little torque screws. That ain't nothing compared to everything else that I've done today. It is 5 p.m. and if you were gonna do this, my first piece of advice to you is take it to U-Haul and have them do it for you. My second piece of advice, if you really want to do it yourself and have the peace of mind of knowing that it was absolutely done with overkill, set aside a whole day. I started 10 o'clock this morning. It's 5 o'clock in the evening. I am completely exhausted, but I'm also completely satisfied. So there you go. Trailer hitch installed. Next episode is going to be trailer hitch wiring. Have a good day, guys.